About 10 miles from China's 11th largest city lies a strange graveyard. It's not for people, but for hundreds of abandoned electric cars. These cars, once part of China's rapid push for electric vehicles, now sit unused and forgotten. One of these cars, the Chang'an Edo, was a popular choice back in 2015 with its 120-mile range. Back then, China was just beginning to make its mark in the car industry, exporting far fewer cars than countries like Japan and Germany. But in just a few years, China leapt ahead and is now the world's leader in electric vehicles. Today, the Chang'an Edo is old news. Chinese drivers can choose from many new models like the affordable Wuling Bingo with a built-in mattress or the luxurious Hongqi L5 used by President Xi Jinping. How did China rise so quickly to dominate the electric car market? Let's dive in and find out. In April 2000, this is how the busiest city in China appeared. There aren't many cars around. With 1.3 billion people living there, there were only 4 million automobiles in existence back then. In contrast, the United States had that many automobiles during 1910. China's roadways were clogged with automobiles by 2005, when the country's car population had more than quadrupled. This resulted in a significant oil issue. This is the problem. With only 1.5% of the world's population, China consumes around 13% of the oil produced worldwide. The Middle East provides the majority of the oil they require. As a result, China is heavily dependent on a small number of nations, as well as the US Navy to secure the oil supplies. Furthermore, they depend on the generosity of the nations bordering the commerce route. This is not a good predicament. China has an issue with pollution as well. Hawaii's total population is less than the number of people who die from pollution each year in China. That is more than 4,000 fatalities every day. Environmental problems are not new in China. Nonetheless, the poorest regions are often the most affected. But large, affluent coastal cities are most severely affected by air pollution. According to estimates, 38% of China's population lives in areas where air quality is considered unhealthy by the EPA. Many of China's biggest protests in recent years have been about air pollution. That's where electric vehicles, or EVs, come in. Beijing found that almost a third of its smog was from cars. Even if all the electricity came from coal, EVs would still produce fewer emissions than regular cars. For a long time, China tried to catch up to German and Japanese car makers by making them partner with local companies. But instead of copying foreign technology, Chinese engineers became reliant on it. The government soon realized it couldn't win this way, so it changed the game. Mercedes, Toyota, and Ford were comfortable with their lead in traditional cars, but EVs were a different story. EVs fit perfectly with China's economy. Unlike traditional cars that need high-skill, high-cost labor, EVs need more low-skill, low-cost labor. An electric car is mostly a battery with some extra parts. And like any commodity, the cost of batteries drops as production scales up. The challenge was keeping these companies alive until they became profitable. China's answer was simple: buy their products. After the 2008 financial crisis, Chinese cities boosted their economies by buying lots of electric buses and taxis. By 2014, Shenzhen had over 1,200 electric buses. 3 years later, all 17,000 of its buses were electric. The government then introduced huge subsidies, with billions of dollars given out. Buyers could save up to $16,000 per electric vehicle. However, these subsidies weren't the main reason people bought electric cars. In a 2016 survey, 52% of respondents said they wouldn't have bought an electric car if it wasn't for the license plate. In most Chinese cities, getting a new license plate involves a lottery, an auction, or both. In 2016, the chance of winning the Beijing lottery was 1 in 667. In Shanghai, license plates could sell for $10,000 or more. Even with a plate, driving is only allowed on certain days of the week. But if you buy an electric car, you get a special green license plate automatically. No lottery or auction needed. Green plates are like a golden ticket, allowing you to drive any day of the week and sometimes park for free. These policies worked really well, maybe too well. The market became flooded with hundreds of nearly identical brands. It wasn't just about supporting weak companies. It was about many cities supporting their own local companies. Instead of letting the best electric vehicle win, each region relied on its local champion too much to let it fail. On the bright side, this crowded market means Chinese consumers have more choices than any other country. Look at EV sales in America. At first glance, it seems like a success. But if you take away Tesla, you'll see EVs haven't really grown over time. It's Tesla that has grown. Americans have mainly 4 Tesla models to choose from. In contrast, Chinese companies launched 107 new models last year alone, from cheap mini EVs to ones with swappable batteries at thousands of stations. However, having 500 EV companies is too many, even for China. So around 2016, the Communist Party let capitalism take charge. They slowly phased out subsidies and stopped local governments from favoring certain companies. They also allowed Tesla to build a huge factory in Shanghai without a local partner, which was a big deal. China also started a credit system inspired by California. Automakers must sell a certain number of EVs for every gas car they sell, or they have to buy credits from other companies. Tesla, only making EVs, earned $1.6 billion from selling these credits in 2020, helping it avoid a major loss that year. Some argue that Tesla benefited the most from Chinese government policies. Chinese companies were left to compete on their own, while Tesla, with its strong brand, became a giant in the market. Tesla also lowered prices on its 2 most popular models, leading to a price war. As a result, around 80% of China's EV companies went under. But those that survived are now thriving, which was Beijing's goal all along. Today, about 40% of new car sales in China are electric. One Chinese company, BYD, sells more EVs than the next 6 brands combined and is on track to sell more electric cars this year than Volkswagen will sell of all types. Tesla is the only foreign car maker not in decline, marking the end of Ford, Honda, and BMW's dominance in China. While China embraces the free market, America is turning to protectionism. Previously, almost every EV buyer in America got a $7,500 tax credit. Now, only cars with North American-produced batteries and minerals produced by US allies are eligible. America is trying to out China by imposing the same restrictions it once criticized Beijing for. But will it work? First, consider demand. Americans on average want an EV range of over 500 miles to consider buying one, the highest in the world. Chinese consumers have the lowest expectations, around half that range, likely because China has efficient high-speed trains for long trips, whereas car ownership is a way of life for Americans. Most Chinese consumers are buying their first car and value the interface as much as performance, showing a difference between Chinese and American buyers. Second, look at supply. China didn't create a battery industry from scratch. It subsidized existing companies. BYD, China's largest EV brand, started as a battery maker for phones before switching to cars. America lacks such companies to subsidize and is starting from scratch. Lastly, China's most effective policies were coercive. In contrast, the US would never restrict the days people can drive without causing significant unrest. All of this points to a difficult path ahead for America, especially given that it is starting 15 to 20 years too late. The new $7,500 federal tax credit is now limited to just 25 automobile types, meaning that 70% of all electric, hydrogen, and hybrid vehicles sold in the United States are not eligible. For the time being, an EV-free world would be one without China. This division is mostly a result of media coverage. Bias is introduced by journalists when they decide what information to include and exclude. Even while we may be conscious of this bias, it frequently remains unnoticed unless we take the time and effort to compare it with other sources that are reporting the same issue.